Looking at what we have used before, we had L3 equal to L1, where the x's were the same, and then L4 equal to L2, where the y's were the same. So we look at this graph, and let's say we make this into a triangle, and make this side into a triangle. And what we notice is that if we take this triangle on the right and flip it over the y-axis, that we get the triangle on the left. And when we do that, the x value of 8 here becomes negative 8 on the other side. And an x value here of 1 becomes a negative 1 on this side. And also an x of 1 becomes a negative on that side. So basically what we did was take all of the x values and make them negative. So that would mean that L3, which is x, is equal to L1, which is x, and we make it negative. So L3 equals negative L1 will change all the signs of the x values, and then you notice that the height of each point is still the same. So then L4 is equal to L2. Then if we look at what we had for x and y, where we shifted those, we would have negative x, because we change the sign of x, comma, y stays the same. So if we look at our definitions, those are the two definitions that we would need. So let's look at the next one. If we took the top, made it a triangle, and then flipped it over, let's say we flipped it down here, then we would have the y value up here of 9 would become negative 9. And positive 9 here would become negative 9 here. And 0 would just stay the same. But the x values for each would stay. So that would mean that list 3 would still be equal to list 1 because the x values didn't change. But when we look at the y values, now the y values have changed signs, so we have L4 equals negative L2. This would be a reflection over the x-axis because we flipped it over the x. And up here, since we flipped it over the y, this will be a reflection over the y-axis. So when we change the sign of the x values, it flips over the y-axis. When we change the sign of the y values, it flips over the x-axis. So it's the opposite of what you would think. Let's flip down here. And we'll look at what happens with number 3 and number 4. So pause the video and go ahead and try 3 and 4. Looking at number 3, we took a point that was at a positive 5 and now it's at a negative 5 for the y. And we have where it was a positive 1, it went to a negative 1 for the y. And it was a positive 3 and it went to a negative 3 for the y. So we know that for x and y, we change the sign of the y. So we have a negative y. And then we'll notice that the x values at negative 2 stay the same. And the x values here at 2 stay the same. And the x values here at 4 stay the same. So the x stays the same and the y changes sign. Go ahead and pause the video and try number 4. So we look at number 4. We look at The y values are the same for these 2 points.
Darren Abbasi.
What we do notice is that the x values went from a positive 3 on this side to a negative 3 on this side. If we look at, we have a positive 3 here, positive 3 here, and a negative 3 here. So the x values are changing. So that means that list 3, the x values, are changing to the opposite sign of the y, of the x values on the original image. And if you look at the y values, they are at the same level, so that the L4 is still equal to L2 because we didn't change the sign of them at all.